Good evening, folks. This is Deb and Dave, and this is your Factivist report for Sunday, the 8th of December. So this is part 2 of our report on transgender Americans. And in this one, it's just the facts, ma'am. We're taking the politics out, and we're talking specifically about perception versus reality when it comes to transgender care so that everybody understands the basis for it, the science behind it, and how it is applied. So without further ado, here is Dave.
Before I start the presentation, I want to do a little bit of who Deb is, who I am, and why we even feel uh, qualified to cover this topic. I hear that a lot. Um, Here's where I'm coming from on this particular topic. No, I am not a parent. No, I am not a doctor. However, I have been a facilitator for many years as a union representative of my local since 2008. And I was also and a student, a grad student, and I have my master's of education. I decided to step away from it, but I do have a master's of education. Deb is a longtime activist. She's been gay since the womb, self-described, and she has a child in transition. So I am an outsider looking for information to inform myself. Deb has been in this situation for many, many years as a gay person and also as a mother of a transitioning child.
Right.
That's where we're coming from.
My child is now an adult, will be 24 in March, and started this process at the age of 17. We live in Boston, where it's easy to get transgender care. They don't ask us ridiculous questions. They don't meddle in our business. It's not a political football here. But we do have rules that we have to follow for this, and everybody follows them to the letter, including us. So without further ado, let's get into the meat of this video.
Here is the meat of the video. And I'm going to bullet points the main points before going into any of this. Number one, no child under the age of, let's say, 11, no prepubescent child is receiving transgender care because that care involves puberty, hormones, and all of that. And before you even mention top surgery and bottom surgery or canal surgery, which is dealing with the lower parts, you have to deal with the hormonal or puberty blocker part of it.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with you. My child has not had surgery yet at 23 years old. Okay. I will not lie and say that we are now not considering it as a moving it up in the food chain thing because we are with Donald Trump in office. I live in Massachusetts, but honestly, Buddha only knows what this idiot has in store for us. So
Hopefully that'll be the last mention of a political name, but that's the reality of this. The reality of this is it is medical care
right,
for people with gender dysphoria,
right.
gender dysphoria. Okay, that's what it is.
And contrary to popular opinion, not everybody going through this is in a rush to get the surgery. My child is a case in point. Okay. So we need
Now,
to understand all of that, that there are myths being spread by the right, mostly, that tends to mischaracterize everything surrounding this whole issue.
so just so you know, what we're going to do here is just hit the bullet points and try to be as general as possible. I don't want to get into weeds, start talking about different drugs and all of that. That's not what this is. Okay. What this is just to show you the ludicrous nature of some of these charges and what some of the controversy is about. All right. That's it. So, without further ado, I will. Where am I? There I am. So, let us start talking about what gender affirming care is and what how long it's been around, because you're going to start hearing uh, politicians talk about how it's new and experimental. It hasn't been around that long. It actually has. All right. This this care has been around formally since the 1960s. The first uh, the first public prescription was in 1976 with a woman from Roanoke, Virginia named Rhoda, who had her own issues. Wasn't transgender, but had her own issues. This care is used to treat transgender individuals, pardon me, and has been for decades, and is considered a cornerstone of that care by people who work in hospitals such as Cedars-Sinai, Johns Hopkins. They're from Harvard Medical Law. These are well-renowned groups of people, not just one individual coming out and saying something.
And by the way,
Okay.
this is based in science, okay? So if you are anti-science, we won't be able to help you with that, okay? Let me just say
One
that.
right. One of the things I didn't even know existed, to be completely honest with you, is something called CPP, or central precocious puberty. You're starting to see kids developing testes and breasts for girls and testes for boys much earlier, at like ages 8 and 9. So when that happens, there can be adverse effects, such as stunted growth, uh, which this is something that you should be able to take care of for your child. But it's possible now, if you're in a state that doesn't allow purity blockers, that might be an issue.
So in other words, this is becoming, this will, if this spreads throughout, let's say, the red states, because right now that's where this is a problem. Let's be honest with it. If this spreads, it will be similar to what you're seeing with women in red states not being able to get care when they have a miscarriage. So now we are going to victimize children who really need the care beyond transitioning. Okay, that's what everybody needs to understand. This is why we keep saying that this is not the government's business, not the government's business.
Now, from Cedars-Sinai, this is an article which is stating that you may not have a condition, or your child may not have a condition, and still develop earlier. There are a couple of recent developments that are being attributed to possible reasons why kids are developing faster, which is added stress, and COVID was added as a pot, and also isolation for these kids, which adds to the stress. Blah blah blah. So, and we're talking.
Did you find anywhere when you were looking at this stuff that environmental factors may be playing a role?
I haven't seen anything yet, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, that was just a question out of curiosity. So,
Yeah, I didn't see anything yet, but not for nothing. If the pandemic is a possible issue, then the panda or the vax or the virus, sorry, if the virus is airborne, then airborne pollutants absolutely could be a factor.
right,
But it just probably hasn't been studied
right.
enough yet to really be out there.
Yeah.
Uh, period. Young children do not receive gender transition treatment for the reasons that I explained. I, the whole reason you're getting puberty blockers is to delay puberty. Now, adults who decide to transition later in life, that's a different procedure. That's different. You're talking about different drugs they have to, or different hormonal treatments they have to take, blah, blah, blah. Estrogen
My
and
child,
testosterone. Yeah.
my child.
So, right.
So
So
when you
it
start
is
at
possible.
17, when you start at 17, it's testosterone blockers and
Right.
estradiol. It's not puberty blockers. So
Right.
that's the difference.
It is, you can wait. All parents, your child can wait if you can. However, if you can't, then, but we're not talking about 5 and 6 year olds, Seth, Moulton, or anybody else. Sorry, I had to get that name out there. I just wanted to mention this. If you're a parent and you took your child, take the transgender part of it out of it for a minute. You bring your child to a hospital for medical care. They get the procedure, and all of a sudden you see your child's name out there, their age out there, their conditions out there. After after HIPAA and everything else, and you thought your child was protected, what would you want to be done to the doctor? Some people are calling this guy a whistleblower. I call him a violator of HIPAA.
I agree. I agree. Of
You may hear about this man. There are right wingers who are proclaiming him a whistleblower.
course they are. Because
And
it
I
suits
don't,
their
I don't,
political ideology.
right. If you are a parent and you take your child to a hospital, whether they're straight, gay, transgender, whatever they are, and your medical professionals put your child's information out there, how would you feel? That's all I'm asking. Okay, more information about puberty blockers for those who are interested. Now, before we talk about top and bottom surgery, think about this. More and more teenagers, straight teenagers, are talking about getting nose jobs, chin lifts, breast implants, or breast reduction.
For
Okay, as
graduation,
for graduation or for whatever.
that's not an issue, even though that's probably much more prevalent than transgender care in America. But the political machine isn't interested in this portion of the program. So,
We could go into how the media and how advertising has made it difficult for young teenage girls. Imagine what it's like for teenage transgender
yep,
kids.
yep.
All right. Just a little bit of information about top surgery, bottom surgery, top surgery. Okay. Um, that is the reduction or enhancement of breast, determining, depending on which way you want to go.
Right.
Uh, and to be completely honest with you, that would probably, to me, that would probably be what the teenagers would want to get done first, because that's the thing that people see more, faster, obviously. Now, what's the difference between this as a parent and allowing your child to do this and breast reduction or breast enhancement for girls? I don't see a difference. I just see
The
the
difference is
reason.
that one group of people is transgender and the other is
Right.
heterosexual. And that's exactly where all of this falls. It's bigotry. That's what,
Okay. So this is what I wanted to mention. Now I understand it's a 2022 number, but this is the general area that we're talking about. According to an October 2022 report from Reuters, around 300 adolescents from ages 13 to 17 received gender affirming mastectomy in 2021 and filed for insurance for that. Now, we have how many people in this country? We're talking about
345 million.
300 in 1 year.
Right.
That's what we're talking about between the ages of 13 and 17. That is what a $14.5 million ad buy got the GOP. Just saying. I'm trying to stay away from it, but
And I'm going to continue to say this again. This is not anybody's business. It's between the child, their parents, and their doctors.
right.
End of story. Okay. This is not your business. It's not your business. It's not a politician's business. It's not.
So for those 282 kids, or around 300, I'm rounding up. Just these are the states that are talking about explicitly prohibiting minors from anyone between 13 and 17 from receiving gender, or a little younger, because as we have said, it is possible that children can develop faster now. Okay. So that's where this whole, oh, they're coming for you kids thing is coming from.
And by the way, let me just say that this thing, that developing faster thing, that's not, that's a rarity too. It's not every child in America anyway.
Right.
Okay. It's not a large number. And so what you're essentially going to end up doing in these states is denying people who genuinely need this care for reasons other than transitioning. All right. And again, it's akin to denying women the right to have an abortion when they're having an abortion for a medical condition, not to have an abortion. All right. They're having a miscarriage, or they have a child who is not going to be viable, and yet you are forced to carry this child. So
I'm going to try to find, and I'll put it in the notes or whatever, like the remarks or whatever. I'm going to try to find exactly how many kids are developing faster, or the numbers for that. My understanding is it's around the same number. It's about, maybe it's a little or it's less than the number of transgender kids, which is 0.6%. It is less than that, but that number, it may have contributed to the quote unquote spike, because the numbers that came out were in 2021 and 2022 of these kids with this precocious puberty that could have inflated the gender affirming care numbers that much more.
right.
Like, oh my God, this is becoming a trend. Blah
Well,
blah blah.
the other thing that inflates those numbers too, though, is people who are
Coming out.
gender fluid or
Oh right.
non-binary, but those people are not receiving gender affirming care. All right. They just identify differently. They're not under any kind of medical care per
Right.
se. Okay.
the numbers I've seen some people say as much as 5%, but I believe that they're including the entire LGBTQ community, to be completely honest with you.
Right.
So we're talking about very small numbers, and we're not talking about, again, no children are getting care in a nurse's office. You could barely get a freaking Band-Aid in there, to be completely honest, without a waiver.
I can't
So
tell
I
you
don't know
how
where
many,
this is
I
coming
can't
from.
tell you how many forms I had to sign to get my daughter to be able to get an Advil at school because she was prone to having headaches. My older daughter, this is my older daughter, not my daughter transitioning, but my older
Right.
daughter.
Now I want to say this. This is a story from from Reuters, putting numbers on the rise in children seeking gender care. Okay, that doesn't mean they're getting it yet.
Right.
This is what you should be doing, going to your doctor. By the way, don't come to me. I have all sorts of sources and people you can call and all of that. Doctors in your area, ways to look it up, a directory, all of that. All right. Don't take my word for it. Go to a professional. But this is
Exactly.
what they're seeking care. It's actually working. People are, you know, asking for advice. Now, bottom surgery. Here's the one thing you need to know. I scoured the internet to see if anyone prior to the age of 18 was given bottom surgery. If it does happen, it's much rarer than what we're talking about with top surgery. So I found no numbers. I'm not saying that you wouldn't be able to come up with someone, but I couldn't find anybody. Okay. 18. And to the best of my knowledge, the people that I know, I've known a few, between a half dozen and a dozen transgender individuals of different ages. I've known them, and they don't openly talk about this stuff. Number one, but number two, that's an extremely private matter
Right.
between them, their doctor, and their family and or their partner. So
So let me just say something because there is the word intersex
yeah,
so that everybody understands.
right,
There are people who are individuals, and I'm going to quote this, born with any of several sex characteristics, including chromosome patterns, gonads, or genitals. Okay. That are outside what, say, you or I are born with. There are some people having both male
right,
and female organs in their
right,
bodies. These are rarities, but again, they happen. Okay.
right,
And it's a reality. And those numbers sometimes are also lumped in
right.
with transgender people. So people need to understand that too. That is a medical condition. Okay.
Now, some people may know that uh, condition as being a hermaphrodite.
That's the
That's
old
how
term
people,
for it. Yep.
that's the old term for it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, next, we're going to briefly talk about a couple things. First, I'm going to get the pronoun issue, I guess you'd call it, out of the way. Number one, to my people on the other side of the aisle, what do you care? It's First Amendment rights. I mean, you scream about First Amendment rights all the time. You know,
Well, they only care about
and
First Amendment rights when it's their own First Amendment
right,
rights.
of
Their First
course,
Amendment rights to oppress other people, actually, is what we're talking about.
you're basically denying that these people exist. They exist. It's a condition, it's an orientation actually that exists. You don't want to talk to them, that's your business. But they are entitled to be called by their identity and their name.
Correct. Correct. Just like you. Don't call me Debbie.
Right.
Nope. You're not allowed. There's only
Please
certain people.
don't call me David unless I've committed a crime, which I won't. All
Right.
right. My mother and my grandmother used to call me David when I broke curfew or whatever. Okay, so it's just call me Dave. What's the problem? Okay,
My family
so
called me
that's the
Debbie all my life. That's fine. I don't
right.
mind my sisters and my cousins because I grew up that way, but I'm not five anymore, so I prefer.
Right.
Okay. That's the way it
Uh,
works.
in all
I
in all
expect you to
honesty,
honor
yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah. It's a generated problem by talking heads like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson.
Right.
They can go, whatever.
Yeah.
So
They probably have to. Never mind.
the next one, transgender violence in bathrooms. Actually, the transgender people who go to the bathrooms are more likely to, way more likely to experience the violence.
Correct.
Again, I scoured the internet. There's a couple of cases. There's one shooter who identified as transgender, I believe they were in Texas. And then there was another person who ran for local office. And I can't find the story, but I believe she was indicted. She was involved in all sorts of nonsense with whatever, and she was transgender. Those are the only two that I could find anything on, but that wasn't in bathrooms even. So what I'm saying,
Say this. You're not committing crimes because you're transgender. You're committing crimes because you're not a good person. That's really what it boils
right,
down to. And by the way, uh, there are no that I know of, and I have several friends who go into gender neutral bathrooms every day. There are no big burly men
right.
going to the bathroom with people like Nancy Mace on any day. And by the way, the only big burly men in my store that go into the ladies' room are the ones that are too lazy to walk an extra 5 feet to the room marked men's room. So, that's what I'm saying. And they're not transgender men either. They're contractors.
So the next one, I'm going to briefly go over the women in sports or whatever, um, or the sports issue. Caitlin Clark played in boys league and dominated. All right. I'm
Right.
not saying it
She's
happens every
heterosexual. Okay.
day. She's a special person, but just because you're female doesn't necessarily mean you can't compete with the males.
By the
Just
way,
because, yeah,
in Medford, Mass, when I was a child, I played for the Park League. That's how I spent my summer. I played baseball because I did not want to play softball. The ball was too big. Anybody can hit a softball. That's what I used to say. So I played on the boys' team every single summer, not the girls' softball team, the boys' baseball team. Nobody had a problem with any of that, not even the boys I played with.
now the position that our current president took was that this issue should be looked at on a case by case basis. It's extremely rare for a transgender minor. And by the way, I'm going to stop using the word transgender child because we're talking about minors generally between the ages of 13 and 17. Generally, maybe between the ages of 11 and 17 for those that are maturing a little faster. Okay, but transgender minors, it's extremely rare that happens. It's extremely rare in adult sports.
It is. It's a non-issue.
However, Here is the first and the only non-binary slash transgender female to play in the WNBA. Is she good? Yeah, she's good. But is she dominant? No.
Oh, he played what,
Well,
11 seasons
11 seasons.
for several
And
different
no,
teams.
for several different teams, nobody said a word.
Right.
Probably because nobody knew. Now, post Caitlin Clark, maybe somebody would probably say something. But she retired this past year. I don't know the reason. I don't know if it's politically motivated or whatever. But what I am saying is the issue is more complicated than people are making it into and more specialized. As Deb said uh, prior, there are very few transgender individuals in the first place. It represents 0.5% of the population of who you consider to be transgender.
That might
Someone
be
who is
about a million
changing their
people. That might
gender.
be about a million people in the US. About a million.
Right, a little over a million. I think 1.2 they said, something like that. So, and when you add non-binary, gender fluid, uh intersex, as you said, or the old term hermaphrodite, all of that stuff, you're talking about 1.6. And then when you're talking about the entire gay population, you're talking around maybe 5%.
So if you look at her stats up there, right?
Yeah,
Well, uh, Caitlin Clark is much more dominant than that.
correct.
Right. Okay.
She borders Laisha, she borders on like all pro
Yeah. Yeah.
every year.
She's a good ball
She's
player.
a good ball
Ball
player.
player.
She
She
kind of had to be who she is and
right,
still get through. You know
right.
what I'm
I mean,
saying? But
you spent 11 years in the league. Okay. You can't be all that bad. All right.
right. Now the next part of this is just references for everybody. Let's say you're a parent and you need more information on your child, and they're talking, hey, I'm thinking maybe I want to do this, or hey, this is how I feel, or hey, I'm 8 years old and I have to stand back to pee, whatever it is. Okay, let's say that you're a concerned parent, or you're a concerned parent that has found out that someone claiming to be a doctor is saying that they can perform pre-hormonal therapy or something crazy that I have never seen. But you see someone who is a quack, there are resources to call
Right.
and ask about doctors.
Can I toss one thing in here?
Yeah,
Because I probably should have asked you before we started this, but you might be a concerned parent because your 8-year-old comes to you and says that they want to be a boy or they want to be a girl. You know what? There is an article out there, and I know, Dave, that you and I used it in a show from maybe a couple years ago
okay,
that says that usually children know
right,
when they are trans, and they're not saying it to you because they're experimenting necessarily. Okay. I'm going
right.
to find that article so that we can put it in this. I'll
I
see.
will definitely put it in.
Yeah, I've
Now,
got it. I just have to find it. It's in my bookmark somewhere.
someone mentioned, hey, the New York Times article, blah blah blah. I'm not going to get too much into the press here. I do have an article at the end, but what I will say about that is that is why parents should be involved, and parents should talk to their kids, and parents should talk to medical professionals.
And that's why politicians should not be involved.
Correct.
Okay. Exactly why. And why none of this stuff should ever be on a ballot because there's no way that this shit should be voted on by me or Dave or you or anyone else that doesn't have the facts in front of them.
Right.
Okay.
Now, I voted yes for Prop 1, but that was to protect people's rights.
Right.
That wasn't about specific care.
Right.
So, all right. Uh, I gave this last week, but this is just lists of contacts that you could call. By the way, you'll see this a lot. Pediatric Endocrine Society. The endocrine system, the thyroid is a lot drives a lot of this.
Mhm.
Just so you know. Human Rights Campaign is another fantastic organization. If you want to get involved or you want to have if you need sources or ask questions, there's an in your area section, and you can call and contact your local human rights campaign. The World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Huge resource here. Also, some contacts. If you if you find a quack, because quacks are out there. Andrew Wakefield taking blood at his, at a kid's birthday party. You know, they're out there. I did not find anyone, but my inclination is when people see a potential need, a quack's going to come out from somewhere, and the Human Rights Campaign, this organization, everybody who are good actors, they want to get rid of those people in terms of practicing any sort of pseudo medicine, or whatever. So if you're a concerned parent and you think that there is someone out there that is a bad actor, let people know. I want to know about them,
Right,
and I want to call them out.
right.
But there is no use for puberty blockers for a child who has not reached puberty yet. You want me to repeat that? Because it might be too logical for some people. Puberty blockers are not used on someone who has not reached puberty yet. I don't know how else to say it. So, this right here, find LGBTQ plus friendly healthcare near you. You just put in your zip code, and what do you need? Trained hormone therapy, or whatever it is. Counseling, whatever.
Right.
You know, uh, Depression counseling. 74% of this population at one point considered suicide. So mental health is huge, and as Deb said, this is as much a mental issue and orientated mental issue being not even the dysphoria part, because gender dysphoria is not part of the DSM. It is not considered a mental illness. It is considered an orientation. But the mental illness comes in the depression with the suicidal thoughts and just internalizing all of this negative crap that these people are hearing and getting the crap beat out of them or whatever.
By the way, years ago, when my wife and I were having our first child, we had our first child in 1997. Before we could embark on that journey, we had to go be counseled. That was a prerequisite even to just be gay and have children together. That is no longer necessary. That has passed, and thankfully that has passed. Okay. Because to have your mental health called into question because you are two people who love each other and want to have a child is kind of fucking crazy, in my opinion.
Right.
So just so you know, none of this has been an easy path, even on that level. People need to understand how difficult this all is. And I've often said this to people, it's not us choosing a lifestyle. It's not, because who would choose this? Honestly, who would choose this? Who would choose to go through this? For what purpose? So
which boggles my mind. I mean, listen, teenagers are going to be curious. Okay, they're going to be curious, but to want to be a transgender child, there's a lot to it.
to be singled out, to be harassed, to be bullied, to be to have information spread about them that is not true by politicians.
Right.
No one chooses that. No one.
And on top of that, there are other potential issues. I don't want to get into it because I'm not a doctor, but I have noticed that, you know, people have linked transgenderism to autism. I don't know how that works. I don't.
Nobody
One
does.
thing,
My child is
no,
autistic also.
right.
Nobody
So
does.
we don't know. We don't know. But here is something because somebody is going to say, "Hey, Dave, you mentioned that teens are much more susceptible to violence by cisgenders, and cisgenders are blah 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 blah." Where did you get that from, Dave? Where are your sources, Dave? Well, Harvard Law or a Harvard study, not Harvard Law, but a Harvard medical study. Transgender teens with restricted bathroom access at a higher risk of sexual assault. Okay,
And
so
they're actually not the perpetrators. They're the victims.
they're the victims.
Okay.
One last thing. I'm going to have a conversation with Deb. See if we're going to do a show, a short show, whatever. I want to highlight those in the media who happen to be transgender, who are not only doing good work outside of the topic, but also covering the topic as well. People like Aaron Reed. Okay. And there are people in on TikTok, and I know TikTok may be restricted or banned in the US, but it's social media. There are people who are legitimate and credible. There are people who are BS. There are people who are just people, kind of like Deb and me. But the point being that the
Heritage
media,
Foundation, BS. Okay.
right?
Aaron Reed, not BS. Okay.
But here's the thing too. You can't trust the media completely either because the the issue with the transgender care now is a hot topic. How you cover it is not a hot topic.
Right.
So,
Oh yeah. There's no question about it. There is no question about that. The fact that the media has blown some of this stuff out of proportion and
right,
and used it for their own end. There's no
right.
question about that. That's the problem with corporate owned media. It is. And it just, like I said, one of the long-term changes that are needed is the reform of, just going back and looking at the Telecommunications Act of 1996 and how all of this corporate owned stuff was made possible um, by
We
that
want
by that
stories to, we want stories out there for to protect the public good, not to stir things up or the what clickbait. Clickbait has become a real term. There's no
no,
reason
there
for it
was a
then.
time, Dave, you and I know this. There was a time when you could identify when we started doing this years ago,
Yep.
clickbait outfits. Now you can't even tell. The fucking media is like clickbait sometimes.
Right.
It
And
really is.
I'm going to call a couple of them out. The Hill. The Hill's one of
Absolutely.
them now.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'm like, The Hill used to be really good. And now the big issue, and we have covered this before, is with opinion pieces. If you are going to have an opinion piece in your newspaper, it needs to have facts behind it, at least some. Okay. And it doesn't.
Right.
One thing that I will suggest to everyone out there who is inclined, because I have said that I'm going to suggest a small act here and there. Deb has said it before too. Learn to write. You don't have to write a letter. Calm down. Put your pen down. You can type an email to your representative, to your local paper, to a national paper. Okay. And this isn't about you. This isn't about you getting recognition or whatever. It's about whatever you know about to be able to tell your story, but for the public good.
Right.
Now, I'm not a reporter. Deb's not a reporter. I did contribute to a story back in 2020 about the pandemic and how my job was handling things, and I was able to change a procedure. Let's just say there are parents out there, there are educators out there that I have seen that have written on this topic, that have written very insightful pieces based on their experience. If you're going to write a piece, base it on your experience and base it in some root, like base of fact.
Right.
That's what I would ask you to do. Okay, whether I agree with you or not agree with you, anything pure fear based is propaganda. Okay. Right. That bottom line, I've seen some of that. I don't want those kids in my school. They look scary, whatever. Really? I mean, not for nothing. The kid that we had the story on with the short show, I, I don't see most children, especially, or I'm sorry, most teenagers that I see who are transgender or who identify as transgender, I don't see them as big people.
They're not. They're generally not.
So why are you afraid of them? Their ideology.
But it's not an ideology. Again.
Number one, it's not an ideology, but as Frank Zappa said, it's words.
Right.
Okay. How does it affect you? It doesn't.
Let me just say this. My child, for 4 years at their high school, would not go in the gender neutral bathrooms either. They wouldn't even go in the gender neutral bathroom. They were afraid. They were afraid of being harassed, afraid of being attacked. So understand how that works, okay?
And let me ask, and we did very well, I think. I know we mentioned a couple of names here and there, but I tried to stay apolitical. But I will say this in the end,
possible.
As much as we could, okay, we tried. We really tried. But anyone calling for the elimination of safe spaces, what's the purpose? Let's look at the word. I mean, and I'm talking about one
danger. That's what the purpose is.
One specific person, and Deb knows who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Ron DeSantis. Okay. He eliminated safe spaces in Florida.
How is that serving children? I'm just curious about that. How is that caring about the children? That's bullshit.
Right.
I'm sorry. Don't even try to go there with me.
Or Greg Abbott.
Don't even
He eliminated any possibility of anti-bullying instruction in schools to identify.
You're free to bully. You are free to bully.
Right.
Will.
And by the way, free to abuse as well, because a lot of the people that he was trying to protect were parents who are abusing their children.
Right.
Okay. So I'm just saying we tried. Now
I'm hearing that Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, Jesus. I mean, I can't even almost say that with a straight face, okay? I mean, I can't even think straight, but that's got nothing to do with it. But Donald Trump's spiritual advisor is going to ban the rainbow flag. Like, like
Oh my
what's that
God.
going to do? Is that going to make us all go away? Poof, we're all going to disappear. I mean, honestly, I mean, you really have to question your sanity if you're thinking that these people make any kind of sense whatsoever. They
Yeah,
don't.
wouldn't it be hilarious if Donald Trump gets assassinated by a group of leprechauns? I'm just
All I want to do is travel down to Washington at night with a bunch of rainbow flags, sticky ones, the little size ones, and just put them all over the Secret Service vehicles. That's my big dream. Okay, just be a clandestine, you know, graffiti
oh,
artist.
God damn it.
I can't. It's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
This episode brought to you by your local gummy company. I'm just saying, you had me reaching for my gummies for that shit. I it's absurd. You're attacking the parents of teenagers.
You're literally telling these parents that they can't do their jobs. They're not allowed to take care of their child's own health. That's the government's job. That is not the government's role here. It is not. It is not the government's role to be in your bedroom, in your doctor's office, or anywhere else in your life. Okay? It really isn't.
I know, listen, there is a Supreme Court case. I didn't put it in. We will be talking about it later. Tennessee banning all gender affirming care. Listen, if that state is allowed to do it, it's the same thing as with abortion. You're going to start seeing dominoes fall.
Yep,
And
you
then
are.
you're going to start seeing parents having to cross state lines to get care for their kids.
You are.
Okay? I'm sorry, that's unconscionable.
It is.
If you
It's not your
if you had
business.
to if you had to travel across state lines, and I'm not talking about transgender. If you had to cross state lines for your kids because of legislation and political reasons, I would assume as a parent you'd be furious. I would be too. Okay. If I had a family member that I had to take care of and I was hamstrung by my government, I'd be upset.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's where we are, and we're gonna be talking about the different politicians and their ideologies and all of that, and why they're going. And Deb mentioned Seth Moulton a couple of times. I've mentioned Tom Swazi. Let me just say this in regards to uh, the transgender athletes in New York and the ban. All right. And I may do it. I may do something on it. There's a case that will probably hit the New York State Supreme Court. Do you know what it's over? Allowing roller derby players to play in their local roller derby league and be able to use state uh, resources or state facilities. They're not allowed because a couple of them either are transgender or they believe that transgenders could be allowed to play. This is a
Roller derby.
counterculture thing.
Roller,
Roller derby.
which
Roller
is,
derby.
not a sport for the faint of heart, even when you're heterosexual. Okay.
Right.
I mean,
And I'm sure they have to sign waivers anyway.
yep,
So, and
really,
by the way, we're talking about people who are well over the age of 18.
right,
Just so you know, we're not talking about that
right.
part of it. So I have a
And
feeling,
again, let me just say this, just like with gender affirming care, as far as I'm concerned, transgender people playing sports, that's for the sports authorities to deal with and
right.
determine.
And
When
the
it comes to
reason,
school
yep,
sports, that's for the schools and the parents to deal with. That's what that is for. It is not for the government to deal with.
the reason that Letitia James put forth a lawsuit against Nassau County was not because they they banned a specific sport. It's because they placed a blanket ban on everything,
Right.
defying Joe Biden's executive order. Now things may change because of Trump, blah blah blah. But roller derby, really? Okay. I'm just saying, I love the names, by the way. I may have to do the show just for the names. A lady named Biscuits and Gravy, and then there's Curly Fries out there, and there's a couple others. I'm like, oh man, I'm hungry now. But I'm just saying that, come on. I mean, really? This is what we're talking about?
This is what we're spending government money on. This is what we're spending your taxpayer dollars on. This kind of nonsense, which
By the
is
way, and
really, honestly, I'm going to tell you this right now. Very little of this panic, almost none of this panic that has been created is based in any kind of real fact.
right,
The panic part is what's being based on ideology. Okay. That's what it is.
$14.5 million on ads driven against Kamala, but against 0.5% of the population. Okay. And now I hear the media complaining that, Kamala spent all this money on advertising when she lost.
You know what? I don't want to hear
That's
from
what you do.
I don't want to hear
Right.
about it. Did anybody complain about George W. Bush spending on advertising? Anybody complain about Mitt Romney spending on advertising when he
Or
lost?
Donald Trump
Donald
spending
Trump?
$14.5 million slamming on the transgender care issue.
Right.
Okay. So I don't want to hear it, but that's what we have right now. Hopefully we'll have a special guest for you next week.
Yep.
We'll see what happens, but just understand.
So you can actually hear from a true transgender person in America
Right.
and know it
Because
will not be my child.
they, they are people. They are not ideologies. They are not ideas. They are not trends. They are not fads.
By the way, let me just say this. Um, I'm going to look at you. I'm talking about your numbers, okay?
Yeah.
What did you say he spent?
14.5.
Okay, I have numbers. All right, this thing since October 1st,
Okay.
it two ads ran 55,000 times across the nation.
Right.
That was $19 million. So
Okay. So I underestimated it.
now wait, but here's even better. Republicans spent nearly $215 million on anti-trans advertising because there are groups like the Senate Leadership Fund
Right.
and other super PACs who have spent millions of dollars on anti-trans advertising in this election cycle. So you're talking about 19 million from the Trump campaign itself, but in total, $215 million
So
from different.
approximately $250 million on 0.5% of the population. You want to say, oh, Dave, it's triple that. Fine. 1.5% of the population. That is, I don't know per percentage point how much money that is. That's insanity.
It is
Okay.
insane.
So you're going to complain about Kamala spending the amount of money that she did. They spent $250 million on anti-transgender advertisement alone,
Exactly.
which is why we felt like we had to do this show in the first place to give you the facts. It's not 100% pro transgender care, but it's the reality of all of this.
Right.
And I understand people's nervousness, anxiety, whatever you want to say about the bottom care and the canal surgery, but top surgery, really? People get boob jobs all the time. What's the problem?
I I don't even, for me, I don't even worry about any of that because my opinion is that's a private thing. It's a thing I shouldn't even be involved in. I
Right.
don't have any anxiety over it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have anxiety over my own kid's surgery. And you know what? Let me just say this. You shouldn't either because it's not your freaking business. That's
Right.
all I'm saying.
Well,
My
I'm saying about parents of a teenager that's talking about by the way, if a teenager is talking about getting a tattoo or a freaking, nose job or whatever, you should be on top of it if
right,
they're in your house. So, of course, if they're talking about transitioning, you want to know everything.
right.
All I'm saying is call professionals. Don't talk to Heritage Foundation, religious zealots, whatever. Talk to endocrinologists or doctors.
All I know is my older daughter, my 28-year-old. I remember when she got her tongue pierced. Okay.
Right, right,
I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "You're going to talk like the guy that was on the movie. There was a movie that was hysterical. He had his tongue pierced, and you couldn't understand a goddamn thing he was saying, right?" I
exactly.
remember, I remember when she got her tongue pierced. That lasted about 3 months, and then she took it out. She just,
Right.
she didn't
Oh,
want
with the
to deal
ear
with it.
loops. So, well, yeah. The big thing that I've seen too is with the nose rings. Apparently, there's like nose clips now.
Yeah,
I saw, a mom flip out because the kid had like a nose ring and she was like 12. And she's like, Ma, it's like,
I
but,
can take it off.
right. But I understand, you're worried about your kid.
I remember when my sister flipped out when my niece got her navel pierced.
Right.
This too shall pass. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Well, there's also risk of infection and that kind of
Well,
stuff,
you know
especially
what?
with,
To be honest with you, I couldn't stop my daughter. She was an adult when she had it done, but I couldn't stop my daughter from doing it. But that was what I was worried about. But that wasn't even why she took it out. She took it out because she couldn't speak right. It was driving
right,
her insane.
right,
She just couldn't get used to it. It was just one of those things she didn't want to put any more effort into, so she took it out. It
right.
filled up. So we're good.
I don't get it. I mean, studs in your butt and all that. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What? Why? And whatever. But I
But
mean, again, that's people's business. I don't
it is.
whatever.
It is.
But there is there is extremely little to be afraid of.
Right.
There's no reason for Moms for Liberty or these all these school boards flipping out or whatever.
Because essentially none of this affects your child. Okay, what
Right,
one child does doesn't affect your child. That's baloney. That's all political construct is what that is. And so
right.
we'll just leave that at that. We will
Yep.
talk to you all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.